Your post and your hook should be like a movie trailer. Good movie trailers get you intrigued by the premise. They give you enough to get excited. There's emotional drama, there's curiosity, but they don't tell you everything. The same way that a great first date, you always heard, the adage like leaves you wanting more, a good hook should do it as well.
Today on Strategy Shorts, I'm joined by Mark Young, who is on the verge of a new great adventure and a new business. But Mark, rather than me messing up the explanation and what you're doing in the world, why don't you take it away and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Dan. Great to be here. Appreciate you having me on. So, been working with a good friend of mine for many years, Daniel Murray, and we've decided to scale up a business together called Authority B2B. And what we do is we are a specialized LinkedIn ghostwriting service for B2B companies looking to attract and grow a marketing audience. Daniel and I have been building, media companies and brands together now for a few years, and we've really kind of built a winning playbook that works. And what we're seeing in the market is many companies are trying to do demand capture, but it's becoming more and more saturated, more competitive, more expensive, and they're realizing how important it is to create demand. Organic social and LinkedIn is one of the best ways to create demand. Less than 3% of the platform of all LinkedIn's users are actively creating. So what we do is end-to-end sort of managed for you company pages, founders, demand gen leaders, and we help you reach a marketing audience at scale. So that's the company, big things ahead, and this will be officially launched by the time the pod goes live. So excited to dive in with you, Dan.
That's it. And I know, having spoken to Daniel as one of our first guests, just how he's managed to conquer the organic reach game on LinkedIn. What he's done with marketing and millennials is just astonishing. But I know that you have got a really rich startup heritage, and this isn't the first company that you've launched. You've been vice president of marketing at other companies, and you've managed to raise millions of dollars for the things that you've created. I'm just wondering, as you pursue this new opportunity, you're going to be leaving other things behind. So how did you know it was time to take the leap into this new opportunity? Why is this the opportunity that you're saying yes to and having to say no to other things as a result?
It's the most interesting challenge in your marketing career, which I think, Dan, it sounds like you and I are pretty similar. Generalists who love to do everything, but when you find that niche and something that you love that you're drawn to, it's what gets me excited when I wake up in the morning. It's the ideas that are always in my head. I've been VP of marketing for a $3 billion company. I've been the first marketer at a startup and, helped it grow through, multi $300 million valuation and so forth. But helping companies build media brands and create demand is just passion. It kind of incidentally came together. My very first role at a startup, we took a company that was around for like 5 to 7 years, and within a few months we had raised over $100 million, big valuation. And almost all of that was built on a media arm and organic social. LinkedIn was a key part of that strategy. And it just made me fall in love with the platform and how to create content. So yeah, I think you just come back to finding the intersection of what you love, what you can get paid for, and what the market values. And when you find that sweet spot, just kind of go all in and double down.
It sounds to me as if you've had some amazing opportunities through your career and you've stepped onto some things that have then turned into rocket ships, and they've opened up lots of amazing opportunities for you. Now, there are lots of people out there who are experiencing hold-ups in their careers, or they've
Mhm.
joined a team and it hasn't worked out. Me, for example, we had this conversation before we hit record. I was working for a startup, very successful company, big acquisition, but then there was a restructure, and all of a sudden I wasn't part of that story anymore. It's a volatile landscape, is what I'm trying to
Yes.
say. Now, what's your advice for people who've got a similar passion to you and I, generalists who love to get things done and really, really passionate about the things they give their time and their lives to, but actually hitting those kind of roadblocks? Do you have any advice for how people can cling on and stick to their missions, visions, goals?
I think the biggest mistake that I made early in my career, which kind of course corrected now, is you should always be repetitive about the one thing that you want to be known for, not trying to reinvent yourself or be original. And I think in many cases, I found that early in my career when I was running agencies, even in management consulting. I've been in tech now for 4 years or so. But before that was more doing, the creative side of building brands. And I kept trying to think, oh, well, I don't have this deep T-shaped expertise in performance marketing or SEO or whatever that might be. But eventually I found that. And when you build in public and not in private, and you say consistent about your narrative and what you're good at, you'll find that the surface area of your luck increases exponentially. So for me, the reason that I'm so passionate about building a media arm and building your brand at the company and your personal brand is it means that you're opening yourself up to so many opportunities that you wouldn't if you're building in private. So I'd say whatever's in your head is probably infinitely valuable to many, many other people. And if you haven't read, there's a very short essay by Kevin Kelly called 1,000 True Fans. That's all you really need to build a sustainable business. And on top of that, you're going to realize, at least I did, that imposter syndrome. That's like, oh, you have nothing valuable to say. Everyone's going to hate what you do. More people are rooting for you than are there to like tear you down. And when you find your tribe of people who are backing you up, it feels like you're never alone, regardless of change. So build in public, stay consistent with your narrative, and don't wait for the perfect time. There's no perfect time. I've been wanting to go out and build a business for many, many years as like the full-time effort. But I was like, oh, I'll do another year. I'll do another enterprise company. I'll just do some consulting. I'll see how it goes. And I just said, hey, I'm at that point now where it's like, just do it.
That's so interesting, that point about your lucky surface area. I sometimes talk
Mm-hmm.
about the serendipity surface area. And there's two important inflections for me around that. One is the power of showing up. You know, do the networking thing, have the conversation, ask the person for coffee on LinkedIn, like on a Zoom call or whatever. But keep introducing yourself and keep creating opportunities to be lucky, because some of those conversations are going to be a yes.
Yes.
What I really like about what you were just saying there is about being repetitive and keep showing up with the same message, with the same narrative. You actually increase the opportunities for people to say yes when they see your message, when it's getting crystal clear and you're standing up for something. So I think that's already super tactical, super valuable. But we're not actually here to talk about all of that good stuff, because
Yes.
we're going to be talking about your million plus impressions that you get every week on your LinkedIn content, which is a mind boggling number for me. I said to you before this call, when I get 1,000 impressions, I'm popping the champagne. So
Right.
I'm really, really intrigued to hear what you've got to say. But before you talk about that, just give us a sense of who you're trying to speak to with these insights today and with these techniques.
Yeah. So when I think about myself 4 years ago, I was a marketer. I wasn't in tech, joining my first startup. And the short version is company that I had joined had raised some funds, and the pandemic was kind of shortly approaching. We had about like 4 or 5 months of cash. We had an investor lined up ready to put money in. Pandemic happened. And then all my budget, all my plans, I was basically told, the VC was like, oh, we're not going to invest right now. Go figure it out and figure out how to get this product in front of millions of people, grow the company, and get fundraising day 5 into the job. No pressure, right? And that was kind of when it sparked this interest in LinkedIn. And as a marketer, the audience that I'm trying to speak to is like myself 4 years ago, right? You're a marketer, you're being tasked to create this insane amount of pipeline with no resources, no creative. You feel alone. You're like, how do I figure this out? I don't have budget to do paid. I don't have budget to do these big splashy things like Salesforce. Like, how do I compete? So it's all about finding the scrappy ways of how you can use platforms like LinkedIn to your advantage and really start to nail your channel model fit. So speaking of myself 4 years ago, we'll dive in and give some of the tips that I've seen. There's 80, 90, 100 different things that matter on LinkedIn, but hooks and getting people stopping in the feed is the most important as a starting point. If you don't get that, nothing else matters.
I'm really excited for this because my company Anthem, it's at the start of its journey. So lots of the challenges that you were just describing, they totally apply to me. So I, for one, am really excited to dive into this. And I know that loads of our listeners are also going to be on the edge of their seats, waiting to be enlightened. So why don't you take it away and I'll dive in if I've got any questions.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter if you're building your personal brand as a marketer, if you're building your company's brand, if you're, the 10th employee at a funded startup or one of 1200 at a Series D company. The principles are the same. And really the most important thing is think of this analogy. Your post and your hook should be like a movie trailer. Good movie trailers get you intrigued by the premise. They give you enough to get excited. There's emotional drama, there's curiosity, but they don't tell you everything. The same way that a great first date, you always heard, the adage like leaves you wanting more, a good hook should do it as well. The entire point of your hook on LinkedIn is to get people to stop in the feed, click see more, and like read through and engage with your content. So before I talk about the actual structure of the hook, one thing to keep in mind is the visual structure of your post. So on any mobile device, right, most mobile devices, holding on my iPhone here, you're going to have people using horizontal posts, text posts, no images. What's going to happen when someone's scrolling on their phone? They're going to see 3 posts from person A, from person B, from person C. The same way, if I was putting you on a smaller version of The Bachelor and I put 3 people in front of you and said, Dan, there's 3 people, which do you want to go on a date with? Right? You're going to have 3 choices, one of 3. If I put one person in front of you and that person seems like a fit, you're going to read. Let's say that my post was in your feed and it was just a text post and there was 3 other people that were there. You might have a topic that's like a passion project of yours related to Anthem. My post might be like an A-, but it's an A+. You're going to skip my post and go to that one. So the reason is we see a lot of images being used, high contrast that take up the entire feed. 800 by 999 pixels is what we always recommend as the way to make sure that your post takes up the entire vertical height of the feed. That way you're being shown as one of one, not one of 3. So that immediately increases your chances of someone stopping. The second, before I get into the hooks, is contrast. High contrast. Too many people have, some type of image where you can't read the words. The same reason why high contrast buttons on landing pages convert better. Make sure that you pick a high contrast combination. There's a reason why black text on a white background or black backgrounds with white text work. Extremely high contrast. So if we take things down now to the actual hook itself, you probably heard the term, the first line is your hook, the second line is your rehook or how you re-engage. In LinkedIn, think of it like a movie trailer, okay? You want to bring 90% of what your post is about in that rehook and that hook. So if your post was about, I wrote one yesterday about people getting stuck in this marketing research death loop where they research and research and research, but they never take action. And they wonder sort of a month from now, like why they haven't got where they wanted to go. I felt it before. It's something that, I've lived. So, my hook for that post was, is your marketing stuck in a research death loop? And we'll unpack that first line for a second, right? We're talking about them. We're talking about a topic that relates to them, that every marketer, every person has probably been in that spot before, right? Where they've read tons of books, listening to tons of podcasts. They have all these notes, but they haven't taken action, right? I'm using priming words, power words here. Death. Death is a strong word. It has a lot of contrast, and I'm asking a question. In my second line, I'm saying you're not alone, but here's the fix. So if you read just that line, you're going to get 90% of what's going on. Oh yeah, I have been stuck in that research loop. Okay, it's not just me. Wait, how do you do that? What does that look like? There's enough of a curiosity. Okay, again, not my best hook. I wrote it late last night eating dinner, but we can go through some of these. And when you think about writing hooks, you need to make sure that, like a movie trailer, it's short, it's concise, it has power words, it brings 90% of that topic when they read it. So I'll go through and I'll give you just some of the last ones from my past 2 weeks. Marketing is the most difficult profession that looks easy in quotes. Line 2, which is dangerous? Why? ? Okay, so I've already said something that people would generally relate to, which is the topic of every marketer gets advice from non-marketers 24/7. So there's a known social feeling about that of, can you just make it bigger? Or Tim from HR, I'm somewhat of a marketer myself. Have you thought about purple? Right? Like, should we be on TikTok? So like right there, the subject matter is prime for interest, right? I've created contrast in the line between difficult or hard and easy. Rather than calling marketing a job and calling it a profession, trying to elevate how people are perceiving that as like marketing is not just a job, it's a profession. It's something that there's a ton of psychology and deep work that goes into it. And then immediately we're getting to my second point, which is dangerous. Okay, dangerous. That's a power word. So we've established something people know. We've created contrast and interest. And now we're saying this thing that happens very common is actually dangerous. And one of my favorite things to do is literally write why question mark in your second line, because you're not giving away the answer, but you're saying read more to find out, right? This format works extremely well once you understand how to craft the hook. So we'll do one more as an example, and I can kind of unpack, some of the thought process around like writing hooks. So this one was a quote that I thought of that I used to have pinned on my desk, which says, "Creative people need time to sit around and do nothing." Great quote. I've been referencing it for years. And my second line says, "Why? Busy is not a flex, it's bad leadership." So let's unpack what's happening here. How many times have you felt pressure as a marketing leader where someone's like, "What is marketing doing? Why are you guys just in this room hanging out?" Right? Everyone's had that feeling of feeling pressure to be on back-to-back Zoom calls, 9 to 5 the entire day, showing your work. Creativity takes space to breathe, right? There's a reason why when you're on a walk, when you're in the shower, when you're going somewhere, you're bringing those creative ideas. So already it's a prime topic. It's a powerful quote from someone that we already know has like traction in the market. And I'm adding a little bit of commentary on the marketing style with some tactical examples in the post about how you should be structuring your day as a marketing leader for your team for creativity. Let's pause it right there and look at what most people would do. If most people would say, "Hey, here are 3 tips to help your marketing team be more creative," and that is a text-based post, it's in the feed competing with 3 others, and it just seems like, "Oh yeah, okay, it's tactical," would you stop and read that? Maybe, maybe not, but you see the difference if you compare kind of A to B, right? Something a little bit profound that piques my interest, maybe something that feels a little bit controversial. There's contrast, there's a question, right? All of these things are important to keep in mind. The best way, if you only take away one thing from this podcast, one thing for writing hooks, create as much contrast and tension as possible between your 2 points. And one of my favorite ads I posted about this a few weeks ago, it's from New Balance. And the premise of it goes, it's showing a shoe, as seen from dads in Ohio and supermodels on the catwalk, eventually is the paraphrase, right? So think about that idea in that headline. Are there any 2 groups in more high contrast than supermodels in Milan on the catwalk and dads in Ohio? You feel that. Like there's a vivid feeling of the contrast that's created there. When you write your hook to get people to pay attention and your rehook in that other line, contrast is everything. Picture vividly someone reading that. Are they intrigued? If you read your hook and your rehook and you're not hooked yourself, you wouldn't click see more. Draft it again. Read it out loud. I literally read all of my hooks out loud before I post them. And I say, "Oh, okay, yeah, I would stop on that." Again, if my answer is no, I go back. So I'll pause there because again, there's a lot of tactics to go into, but high contrast, 90% of the message, curiosity, read it out loud.
There is so much value in the ground that we've already covered. I loved when you referred to priming words earlier in the conversation and choosing words with high contrast. I think that is such a valuable space to play for most content creators. And we know, you and I know, all marketers know it's difficult to maintain that discipline when you've got a billion jobs to do on any given day.
Yes.
You're churning out content. But I think the tip to take a pause and read it out loud is just so brutally simple and beautifully simple, because you're just going to create that little pause, that little bit of breathing space to challenge yourself. Does it contain enough contrast? Is it exciting enough? Is it a movie trailer? And also loved some of the other things that you were calling out at the beginning of this section, when you were talking about dominating the screen real estate, if you've got option 1, 2, and 3,
Hmm.
is it enough to push someone across the line? And can you actually take up more screen real estate to make sure that you're the only option rather than sharing that space with a bunch of other
Correct.
people? You're creating competition in that scenario for yourself if you're not making those simple and easy moves. Now, this has been so full of practical thinking and practical tactics for people to take away and try. But we always like to finish on something that people should do immediately, something that they should take action with as soon as the episode finishes. Now, you may have already covered this in the last section, but is there one thing that you want to encourage people to go away and do to make this real in the work they're doing right now?
My biggest recommendation, I can give you the tactical steps of what to do. Step number one, go download a Chrome extension called Clio, Kleo, I think is the name. It's free. I think Jake Ward was the one that built it, and it lets you look at your highest performing LinkedIn posts to date. So rather than you having to go through and format them or plug anything in, you can look at all of your high performing LinkedIn posts. Find the top theme or pillar that you talked about historically that's got the most engagement. You'll see it in the data. Like, you'll literally see of your top 5 posts a trend emerge usually of what that is. Take that message and take that post from 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, and rewrite it with a great hook with the format that we've gone through, and post it tomorrow and see how that goes. That was what got me into creating content 4 years ago, was just being relentlessly consistent and not being afraid for people to laugh at me or fail. Find that one pillar content, the hill you would die on, and just find new ways to say that again and again. But just start tomorrow with what you've learned, and you'll find that it gets easier every single time.
Mark, that is about all the time that we've got for today. And it's a shame because I feel like this conversation really, really could have gone further and deeper, and we could have pulled on all the threads that I think we can both sense are just waiting to be pulled. But unfortunately, we'll have to save that for another time. Thank you so much for making some time for Strategy Shorts, and let's speak again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Dan. Appreciate it.